So last month, we talked about some of the very dark places that we can go in order to earn God's grace. And we specifically focused on Allah last month and Islamism. We also mentioned a couple other things. It doesn't matter if it's the Aztec god, if it's the Hindu goddess Kali Ma, or if it's Jesus, Jehovah, or Yahweh. When you have faith in God and act accordingly, it can lead us to some really bad places. As Nobel laureate Steven Weinberg said, for good people to do bad things, that takes religion. Now, if you take that seriously, then it becomes your ethical responsibility to do something about it. Dave Silverman takes that notion extremely seriously and has been doing something to combat the intrusion of religion into the lives of people that don't want it for years. As an author, inventor, and the driving force behind so many of the initiatives that have helped lead to the meteoric rise of the nuns, Dave has served all of us as an unflinching champion of rational thought over blind belief. So it's a very distinct honor to welcome to the stage the President of American Atheists, David Silverman, to talk about Fighting God, an Atheist Manifesto for a Religious World.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry. We're in a Unitarian church, but we're actually atheists. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. That's my title. My name is David Silverman. I want to thank you all for coming here. Thank you, Rob, for bringing me up. Thank you, Lawrence, as well. Thank you to the local AHA chapter and, of course, to the SSA for coming and doing that as well. So I'm going to read a little bit from Fighting God, an Atheist Manifesto for a Religious World. Before I do that, I'm going to give you just a bit of background. So I did the Reason Rally in 2012, and 2012 was the Reason Rally was the largest atheist event in world history. We had 30,000 atheists in one place, gathered at the Mall of Washington, D.C., and it was a fantastic event. And shortly after that, I was approached by a small press publisher to come and do a book. So I did. I wrote a book. It was called Atheist, and it was 50% David Silverman and 50% firebrand atheism. And just before the book was published, the publisher and I fell through. We parted ways, and I was left with a book and no publisher. So I sent an email out of the blue to Barack Obama's agent. And she knew who I was, and she signed me 4 days later. Then she sent out, after a little bit of editing, an initial treatment to her top line of publishers. And the guy at Macmillan St. Martin's, one of the largest publishers in the world, knew who I was and signed me right away. Now, I don't say this to tell you how famous I am, although I am pretty famous. These folks didn't do what they did because they liked me. My agent didn't take me on because she knew who I was. The editor didn't take me on because he knew who I was. They did that for the same reason. They thought they could make money off of me. The reason that they thought they could make money off of me is because atheists are coming out of the woodwork. And the reason that atheists are coming out of the woodwork is firebrand atheism. This is the case that I make in Fighting God. And what they did, that publisher, he said, okay, take everything about that book is half you, half David Silverman, half firebrand atheism. Take everything about you out of the book and fill in the rest. You have 6 months, ready, go. And they changed the title, and they changed the cover, and they changed the entire nature of the book, and the book is much better. You know what? If you ever write a book, get yourself an editor who will tell you to take everything about you out of the book, because it gets a lot better. So, in Fighting God, I make the argument that firebrand atheism, the so-called new atheism, which is not new at all, that firebrand atheism is not only more effective on a micro level, but on a macro level, and it is the nicer and more ethical thing to do. It is the nicer thing to do than the so-called nice guy approach. This is the core of firebrand atheism, and oh, by the way, I back up my statements with data. Not just data, but quantifiable, independent data from multiple sources. That's the way data should be. So I'm going to read a little bit now about Fighting God. I'm going to read the introduction. I'm going to read the definition of atheism. And then I'm going to read the definition of firebrand atheism. And that'll give you an idea of what the book does and how it goes. This is an unapologetic book because we are through being apologetic. We should not be apologetic. In fact, being apologetic is the wrong thing to do on many, many levels. So I hope you enjoy this reading, and then we'll get some questions and answers done. I'm reading from the introduction first. I wish I were wrong. I wish all the good guys went to heaven, all the bad guys somehow justly paid for their crimes, and everyone, especially my daughter, lived forever. Indeed, not a single person on earth wants people to live forever more than I do. I also wish the World Trade Center still stood, hunger was eradicated, and my mother had lived long enough to see this book published. But wishing doesn't make it true. We live in the real world, and I make my living telling the truth. I'm that atheist guy. That guy with the atheist shirt and or jacket and or baseball cap at the airport or at a street fair. And I'm not talking about some subtle clothing that someone might pass either, right? Some people here met me yesterday in the airport. I wear the word atheist in big letters. I cannot be missed quite by design. I talk to people who ask about what my clothes say, which happens more and more these days, answer their questions as honestly and clearly as possible, and sometimes have on-the-spot debates. I am a walking, talking atheist billboard. I love being that guy. You should try it. I'm also that atheist guy on TV, often Fox News, who espouses such horrible concepts as religious equality and the separation of religion and government. Same thing. Usually to a talking head or an audience that simply does not understand the concept and tries to trip me up rather than actually consider that I might be right. Some call me a militant atheist. So others call me a dick. Right, Chris? I am neither. A militant atheist, like a militant Muslim, Jew, or Christian, would be someone who uses, threatens, or promotes violence. And there is nothing violent in anything I do or condone. A dick would be someone who makes people angry for the sake of making people angry. I have much better reasons. I promote no harm, violence, or vandalism, opting instead to fight for equality of all people through truth and honesty. I think that makes me that pretty good guy who gets called a dick so often he gets angry or writes a book about it, but my publisher thought such a title might be too long for the cover. I've been a walking, talking atheist billboard for nearly 20 years. I've had many conversations with strangers about atheism, as you would expect and as I intend. In the early years, most of my on-the-street conversations were confrontational and somewhat less than civil. I've received far more than my fair share of the stereotypical "you're going to hell" comments, usually delivered hit-and-run style, whereby people deliver their good news that I will be spending eternity being tortured, and then run away before I can continue the conversation. However, in more recent years, I've been receiving more and more positive comments, and the negativity that I once received in every airport, in every city, has fallen silent. Indeed, the hostility that I used to encounter nearly every time I stepped out the door never occurs anymore. Why? Because we are winning. In this enduring battle for freedom from the lie of God, a phrase I use to describe all deities and the lies, empty promises, and the threats that surround them, we are finally winning. Because mainly, thanks to the internet, we are finally capable of trying. We, the atheists of America, are on the cusp of achieving equality. We have no money compared to religion. We have no power compared to religion. Yet our numbers are growing while theirs are shrinking. Because it's not just about money and power, but about truth. Truth beats money and power, and when it comes to religion, atheists have a monopoly on truth. Atheists like me are what I call conclusionary. We have concluded that all gods are myths because we've seen sufficient evidence and heard or read sufficient arguments to convince us that there are no gods. But this is not stubbornness. If any god, anywhere, were proven real even once, I would convert, quit my job, and donate all the proceeds of this book to that correct God's religion. Of course, that has never happened, and there is no reason to expect that it will. I am convinced that this mentality holds true for almost all atheists everywhere. If there were any proof of any God, there would be practically no atheists anywhere. I search for truth, not confirmation of a preferred belief. But religion is not just incorrect, it's malevolent. It ruins lives, splits families, and justifies hatred and bigotry, all while claiming to be the source of morality. People die and suffer needlessly because of religion. Such a waste. As the late Christopher Hitchens said, religion poisons everything, and that seems almost literal when we're talking about the minds it infects. It makes good people do bad things while thinking they are doing good. effectively turning good people into bad people, at least sometimes. Religion deserves to die. Too many people call me a dick because I challenge the absurd notion that religion deserves respect by default. But religion is wrong for demanding respect simply for being, and even more wrong for demanding never to be questioned. Indeed, it is my duty as an American, as an atheist, and as a nice person to do what I can to take religion down. Not by force, not by law, but by truth. And the truth is quite simple. All religions are lies, and all believers are victims. I'm just going to give a little speech, a little part here on the definition of atheist. I'm going to put this down. This is going to fall somewhere. All right. Chapter 1 is called Atheist Know Thyself. And it's a very important chapter because as I get into the book, I talk a lot about identification. I talk a lot about the importance of calling yourself an atheist, knowing what an atheist is, and knowing what all those different terms are. And I make the point, and I make it very hard, that nobody should call themselves agnostic, humanist, secular, or anything other than atheist. This is the point of this chapter. If you say I'm for equal pay, that's reform, but if you say I'm a feminist, that's a transformation of society. Gloria Steinem. Fuck you, you're an atheist, Penn Jillette. It's an unfortunate situation. Even some major sources of information give the wrong or at least imperfect definition of the word atheist. Merriam-Webster defines an atheist as a person who believes that God does not exist. Wrong. The Free Dictionary describes an atheist as a person who absolutely denies the existence of God or any other gods. Nope. How do we win a battle with words when the words we use are wrong? How do we organize atheists when most of the atheists don't even know they are atheists because they've been given wrong information? The Oxford English Dictionary, thankfully, gets it right. An atheist is, quote, a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. So we begin this book with 3 different reliable sources giving 3 different definitions for atheist. How do we know which is correct? There's a big difference between lacks belief and absolutely denies. So we need to look at the word and see its etymology for support. As stated perfectly in defineatheism.com, absence rather than opposition is indicated by the a prefix, meaning without. Hence, atheism can be concisely characterized as without theism. Theism is consistently defined as belief in the existence of a god or God. So atheism is therefore the absence of a belief in the existence of a god or gods, which makes it a broad term that has many implications, not just absolute denial. Atheism is without that belief, not against it. Got it? Now let me clarify some points with some helpful tips for determining if you're an atheist. For this list, literal God means a living, thinking, supernatural being, as opposed to a metaphor such as God is love or God is the universe. If you don't have a belief in any literal gods, i.e., you are without a theism, you're an atheist. If you don't have a belief in any literal gods but aren't sure none exist, you're an atheist. If you don't have any belief in a literal God but think rather God is a metaphor for love or humanity, you're an atheist. If you don't have any belief in any literal God because you think the universe is unknowable and we can never know all the answers, you're an atheist and an agnostic. If you don't have a belief in any literal God and you feel you're educated enough to say you can say definitively there are no gods, you're an atheist and a conclusionary one like me. If you don't have any belief in a literal God, but you like or follow some of religious traditions, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, or whatever, in which you were raised, and maybe even agree with some of the religion's non-supernatural teachings, i.e., love thy neighbor, you're an atheist. If you don't have a belief in any literal God, but you wish there were a God, and maybe still hold out hope for one to show up, you're an atheist. Because hoping and wishing are not believing, right? If you don't have any belief in a literal God, but you consider yourself on the fence. You're an atheist. Until you believe, you're not a theist. And no, there is no middle ground. You can't have a belief that a God exists. You have a belief that a God exists, or you don't. If you don't have a belief in a literal God, but you like to think there is a God because the story is good and wouldn't it be nice if it were true, you're an atheist, and you're literally proclaiming belief in something you don't know is a fantasy. Finally, if you don't have any belief in any literal God, but you absolutely hate the word atheist, tough shit, you're still an atheist. Okay, so now we know what page we're on. If you don't have a literal God belief, you're an atheist, no matter what you call yourself. And I make the point in Fighting God many times that if you don't have a literal God, you have the ethical responsibility. Not only are you telling the truth by telling yourself an atheist, but you have an ethical responsibility to call yourself an atheist as opposed to any of those other euphemisms. Now, firebrand atheism is what I'm known for, and it's what American Atheist stands for. And a lot of people say that firebrand atheism is just being mean and being rude. And that's not it at all. So this last reading that I'm going to give is from chapter, I don't know what chapter this is. It's page 126. It's defining firebrand atheism a la David Silverman. American astronomer, writer, and skeptic Phil Plait, in a now famous speech in 2010, complained about the atheist movement's dicks, asking, how many of you became a skeptic because someone got in your face screaming and called you an idiot, brain damaged, and a retard? He subsequently made it clear that he was not talking about anyone in particular, but this is one of those quotes that, when heard, somehow draws glances my way. Now, to be clear, this is not what I'm about. Yes, I am loud and proud, but I don't insult just to insult. I've been married to Hildy, a theist, for 20 plus years now, largely because I've never called her names for believing in God. Firebrand atheism is simply telling the truth, with the emphasis on the telling. There's a difference between telling the truth only when cornered and proactively speaking what you know to be truthful, helpful, and healthy, and the latter is where I live. Silence often implies acquiescence or even agreement. I'll say that again. Silence often implies acquiescence or even agreement, and often that makes it a lie. I tell the truth. People need and deserve to hear the truth. And telling the truth, and the truth needs and deserves to be told. Indeed, it often needs to be shouted. My 5 simple precepts of firebrand atheism rely on telling versus silence, honesty versus lies, including the lie one commits when remaining silent, and correctness versus political correctness. Point 1 of firebrand atheism: tell the truth as often as possible. Some examples of true statements are, religion is a lie and all gods are myths. These truths should be stated loudly and often, yet political correctness and religious privilege makes telling these truths difficult. Tell the truth anyways. Point 2. Don't feign respect for the unrespectable. Feigning is lying. If you say you have respect for beliefs that you actually find silly, you are lying. See point 1 and tell the truth. If you do not respect the belief in an invisible man in the sky, say so. Point 3. Don't accept inequality or privilege as acceptable, even if it is the norm. Accepting inequality is feigning respect. See point 2. It's not okay for some people to get something, obtain a privilege, or even be acknowledged over others by the government simply because they think a God exists. We are a nation of equals, and we need to protect that or lose it. Nobody wants to be second class, but sitting back and letting privilege run unchallenged is acquiescing to second class citizenship, even if only to a small degree. If you don't think that's fair, then you have every right and indeed the responsibility to challenge it loudly. Silence, again, implies acquiescence, which means silent atheists imply their consent to Christian privilege. Don't do that. Point 4. Don't let the words, "I'm offended," silence you. As Richard Dawkins has said so many times, there is no such thing as a Christian, Jewish, or Muslim baby, but most theists are indoctrinated from birth into believing that their religion is a core facet of their identity, every bit as much as genetic lineage. This does not negate the need to tell the truth. Believers are wrong, and that's the truth. But it does open the door to theists taking it personally when you criticize religion. Always make it clear that you are criticizing the belief, not the believer. Say something like, you are many things, a father, a son, a professional, and one of those things is religious, and it is only that small portion of you that is wrong. In my experience, this works well most of the time. Remember, the truth sometimes hurts, and some believers' knee-jerk take-it-personal reaction is nothing more than a manifestation of the brainwashing that they've received. It's certainly not a reason for you to stay silent, thereby implying agreement, which is lying, about your atheism. If they can talk about their myth, you can and should talk about reality. Anything else is unequal and disingenuous. To acquiescence to inequality is dishonesty. See point 3. Point 5. If someone tries to limit your freedom using religion, follow points 1 to 4, only louder. This specifically refers to the defensive nature of firebrand atheism. For example, consider again Draw Muhammad Day. We draw him not because we know it pisses off Muslim people, but rather because some Muslims are trying to make us obey their laws not to draw him. We are resisting an attempt to infringe on our rights to draw what we want. And they are actually telling us not to draw him because it's against their religious views is the only reason we do it. It's the only reason we do it. I mean, I'll just take a digression here. If you look up the Danish cartoons, if you just Google the Danish cartoons when they had those riots, and you Google the protests during that period, you'll see a very consistent theme. Do not draw Muhammad. Right? Everybody was screaming, do not draw Muhammad. And the entire world says, we will not yield to terrorism. And then the entire world yielded to terrorism. And everybody said, oh, we're not going to draw Muhammad. We weren't drawing Muhammad anyway. We won't do it anymore. And then it became bad to draw it. If I draw Muhammad, I'm the bad guy. I'm instigating. I'm provoking them. I'm doing what I'm allowed to do. But since they have it, they've said, they've decreed that we can't do that. And since they've threatened us with violence, I'm the bad guy for provoking when I do something that is my constitutional right. Ladies and gentlemen, every religious law, there's 100,000, 200,000 religious laws in this world. They have all the same thing in common. They have no authority over you at all. Zero. You can draw whatever you want. And if they come to you and say, it's against my religious law for you to do that, that's too bad. Now, I'm reminded of a story that Penn once told me about one guy walks up to another guy, says, oh, I notice you're wearing a Mason ring. Guy says, yeah, I'm wearing a Mason ring. So first guy says, so you must be a Mason. Second guy says, no, I'm not a Mason, I just like the ring. First guy says, well, it's against Masonic law for you to wear a ring unless you're a Mason. And the second guy says, well, it's a good thing I'm not a Mason then. Their religious laws have no effect on you. But when we give away, what happens? When we give away, what happens? Now look at the more recent protests. There were protests after Charlie Hebdo. Look at those same Islamic protests, those same Muslim protests. The signs that used to read, do not draw Muhammad, now read, do not insult Islam. When you give up a right, I can guarantee you it is not the last right that you will be asked to give up. First, you cannot draw Muhammad. You weren't doing that anyway, so everybody who does that now is bad. And the next one is do not insult Islam. Oh, that's pretty bad. What's next after that? I'm sorry, ma'am, you're showing your hair. That offends me. We cannot let them take away our rights. We cannot let anyone take away our rights. This is what I'm talking about with this. If we yield, if we stop telling the truth, if we say, okay, we'll obey your laws for peace, that's not the last time you will lose rights, and that's not the last way they will use rights. They will take it away. Yielding to terrorism yields more terrorism. You can see it clearly in this example. And that's really all I do, and that's all I ask of you. Tell the truth, be an honest person, and don't let the well-intentioned but wrong political correctness of today's society, which is, not coincidentally, heavily influenced by religion, squelch you. This is not an attack on religious people. This is not an insult to their God. This is the truth. We are right, and they are wrong. If we never tell them that, who will? This is why religion hates the firebrand atheist more than anyone else. We use words to shove religion off of its pedestal, thereby stripping it of the privilege that insulates it from law, morality, and common sense. It's effective and it benefits the entire movement by highlighting our issues and our existence and allowing the nice guys to garner publicity on their own as a byproduct. We raise awareness of our existence and our issues on a national level, chipping away at the lie that we are not large enough a segment of the population to be relevant while demanding nothing more than equality. Add on that atheism is being de-demonized by the population at large by our work, and you can see the win-win-win of firebrand atheism. Thank you. So I don't think we have any books for sale, but they are on sale on Amazon. Very privileged to say that Fighting God is 74% five-star reviews on Amazon, so I'm really privileged to be that. So thank you all for coming. What's next, Bob?
So they're going to have some questions. We have some slides. We'd also love to get as much audience participation as we can. So we'll probably start with a couple of slides. There'll be two circulating mics. Allie, could you grab one of the microphones and walk that around? And they ready to come together. Jason, can you go to the next slide, please? Right. So, touch on this one.
So when Marco Rubio,
Yeah, can you leave it on here for a minute?
when Marco Rubio
Asked us to make flavor of ice cream.
he was trying to teach the Lord and Savior,
And he died on the cross for us.
Ted Cruz,
I don't know if this one's...
It's okay, I'll take it from here. So let's talk about the political candidates. And I think this is an important slide. There's some things that we need to talk about when it comes to politics. First of all, let's just put this on the table. Bernie Sanders is a fucking atheist. Okay? And some people I know are really upset that he won't call himself an atheist and that he's hedging. But first of all, folks, this is the first time in American history, as far as I know, that the word non-religious has been attached to any presidential candidate. Okay, he's a non-religious Jew, and as you will read in Fighting God, that equals atheist, 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 atheist. Now, he can't say it, but this is a very important point. He is normalizing atheism. He is normalizing non-religion. And that's point one. Point two is on the other side. I'm not going to name a specific candidate, but let's just say he's really huge. And let's just say he says the Bible is his favorite book, but he can't name a single Bible verse. He couldn't name Genesis 1. He couldn't name John 3:16. He doesn't know anything about the Bible at all, apparently. So what we've got on the left is a Republican frontrunner who can't name a single Bible verse. On the right, we have a non-religious Jew, specifically, outwardly, non-religious Jew. He says, my theology is that we're all in this together. Point three is that Jerry Falwell Jr. just endorsed Donald Trump. Let's look at these three things together and go back 20 years. 20 years ago, if anybody on the Democratic side had the term non-religious attached to him, the religious right would have freaked out. 20 years ago, if a Republican couldn't name a Bible verse, the religious right would have freaked out. They had the power, they had the money, they had the pull. And this year, they're endorsing the one candidate who didn't know Genesis 1. Why? Look at the progress that we're making. People come to me and they say, will we ever have an atheist candidate? Look at how bad this is. Look at how hard it is. Folks, we are seeing our victory right here in front of us. We have an atheist on the left, we have an atheist on the right, and we have the religious right that is so weak, and they know it, that they're not backing their religious candidates, they're backing the winning candidates. They're backing the non-religious winning candidates instead of the religious losing candidates, and they're shutting up about the fact that Bernie Sanders is an atheist. Look at that. Think back 20 years. Think about the Reagan and Bush years, the Bush 1 years. Think about the Bush 2 years. Think about how much we have grown as a country in just this amount of time. This is something that I feel is very positive. I love this election. I love this election. And I do care very strongly who wins. Especially now that we've lost Scalia. I'm in such mourning for that. But look at what we've got. We are making serious progress. Fast, hard progress. And the reason that we're doing it, I say, is because atheists are coming out of the closet. Atheists are becoming normal. This is what we're doing, and this is the manifestation of our victory. This is our progress. In fighting God, I have a lot of numbers. And it's, like I said, quantifiable, independent numbers from multiple sources that show that atheism is being normalized, atheism is being normalized at a national level, and atheism is being normalized by American atheists specifically. I can make that point and I can defend it and I can show it. And what we're seeing is that we, at American Atheists, we, firebrand atheists, are making atheism normal, hard, normal, and making serious progress, such serious progress that we've got this. And yeah, I'm very proud. And I think you should be proud too. And I think what we're going to see over the next 10 to 15 years as the non-religious people, as the atheists, come out as atheists, as the young people, the under 30 crowd, which is now 30% atheist or more, as they come out and they take power, we are going to see this change happen. But this is why we need to organize. This is why we need to come out. This is why we need to grab this power. Our problem as atheists is not that we're weak. It's that we don't know our own strength. One of the things that we must do in order to get our own strength is to unify, and that way is to do it by not saying silly things like, I'm not an atheist, I'm an agnostic. I'm not an atheist, I'm a humanist. I'm not an atheist, I'm a secularist. I'm not an atheist, I'm a skeptic. Those are all lies. If you don't have a belief in a God, call yourself an atheist and help me change the country. Next one. Darwin's Day, weighing the evidence. Why are we still having this debate? You want me to talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, why are we still having this debate? It's the same conversation. It's the same conversation. The reason we're still having the debate is because the religious right is losing, and they know it. They're building arcs. They're building arcs. There's a flat earth movement. This is great stuff. This is wonderful stuff. I think they should build their ark encounter. I think they should have their things. Let's do it. Let them run their money out. Because guess what? The young people see it. They can kick, scream, and cry all they want, and that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly why we're having all this stuff. That's exactly why Ken Ham is doing what he does, and that's exactly why I love debates. I love debates with creationists. A lot of people don't because they say it legitimizes us, legitimizes them. Oh, I disagree. I think it puts them right in their place. I think it shows them for exactly who they are. And I think it's the best thing to do. Let's debate them all. Let's let them make their cases. Let's let them build their arcs. And let's show them for what they are. They think they're going to win. I think they're going to dig their own holes. I think they're going to go down on their own graves. They're going to go down on their own effort. And I think it's just wonderful. The rest of the world is laughing at us. And today's young people know it. Today's young people know it. Now, we also have to identify the harm that this does. We also have to identify that pushing ignorance for personal gain, pushing ignorance is harmful to this country. And that's where the firebrand atheists need to come out. We need to not only let them do it, but we need to call them out on it. We need to point out how ludicrous it is. And we need to have the discussion to as large an audience as possible. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about cavemen riding dinosaurs. Let's talk about the flat earth. Let's talk about 2 million species on an ark, and then the kangaroos hop down to Australia from Mount Ararat. Let's talk about that. Let's show them for how asinine it is. I think they should be encouraged to debate us. I think they should be encouraged to build all their arks and all their parks and show themselves for how ignorant they are. And that's how we allow them to help us kill religion dead.
Anybody have any questions in the audience? All right. Where else? First.
I was just curious about how you came about with firebrand. I mean, I feel like a firebrand myself. I feel aggressive, but I think I would not have chosen firebrand.
So that's a good question. The reason I went with firebrand is because I hate the word militant. Okay, and I hate the word militant a lot. Okay, when you talk about militant atheism, you think guns, you think vandalism, you think rocks, and I hate that because there's nothing vandalism, there's nothing like that in anything I do. New atheism isn't correct either. I stand on the shoulders of giants. One of my giants is Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who founded American Atheists in 1963. That's not new. So it's not new atheism, and it's not militant atheism. I was looking for another term, and one of my friends, Greta Christina, actually started talking about firebrands and diplomats, and that's where I took it. And it seems to be sticking well. People seem to like the term.
Pardon me, what's the difference between agnosticism and atheism?
Okay. Absolutely fucking nothing. I want to talk about this a little bit. I want to make sure that I get this straightforward because this is something with which I have an extremely strong opinion. First of all, it doesn't answer the question. In Finding God, I talk about how many people know what the words mean. And I use, again, statistically significant quantifiable data from multiple independent sources. Approximately 87% of this country knows what an atheist is. Approximately 50% of this country knows what an agnostic is. Approximately 30% of this country knows what a secular person is. And approximately 10% of this country know what freethinker and humanism is. That means if you call yourself an agnostic, you've got a 50% chance of being confused with a theist. But that's not the big point. The big point is, this is a water bottle. I do not know everything in the universe. But this is definitely a water bottle. We have these words, definite, sure, certain, no, K-N-O-W. We have these words, and we use them all the time. I'm David Silverman. I'm not probably David Silverman. I don't know everything in the universe, so I can't say for sure. We have these words. We use these words, and it never means we know absolutely everything in the universe. I know things. I am certain of things. Things are definitely true. Even though I do not know everything in the universe, we have those words. We have those words to express certainty. But when it comes to God, when it comes to the invisible man in the sky, agnostics say, well, there's probably no God. Well, that's crap. That's bullshit. That's taking a myth and elevating it above everything else we know to be true. This is definitely a water bottle, but the invisible man in the sky gets a probably not. It's probably not true. I don't know everything. So maybe there's a little piece, maybe, what I say that about leprechauns? Would I say that about the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy? Would I say that about, I mean, hey, this could be God. You can't prove it's not true. This could be God disguised as a water bottle. You can't prove it's not true. Is this probably then a water bottle? No, it is definitely a water bottle. The word agnostic is a useless term that nobody should ever use anywhere because it's a term that's used to place religion on a pedestal above everything else we know to be true. This is definitely a water bottle. I am definitely David Silverman. And as surely as I can say anything else, there is definitely no God. So don't use the term. Thank you.
Hi, David. First of all, I want to say that I was there in 2012 at the Reason Rally, and I'm planning on being there. The next one is going to be this year.
Yeah, I'll talk about that. That's a great segue. I'll talk about that right after you're done. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I consider myself an outspoken atheist,
A
but
what?
usually in outspoken, vibrant,
Yes.
angry atheist. But usually I try to steer clear from one word, which is truth. So, and I found it very peculiar that you used that word several times today. And I usually try to steer clear because that's the ground on which usually absolute statements and religions are rooted.
Yes.
And I wanted to know why they chose that word, which to me is very peculiar again, and what are your thoughts on that?
Because truth has meaning, and religion doesn't own it. And we actually own the word truth. Truth means it's consistent with everything else that we know to be true. It's a little recursive, but that's what it means. Truth is something that is consistent with everything that we as a society know to be true. This word has meaning. You can't say, well, something is my truth and you have your truth. That's bullshit. That's not truth. We need to take truth back. There's an invisible man in the sky. That is not the truth. It is not consistent with everything that we know in this world to be true. It is not. It is the exact opposite. So we need to own the word truth. And we need to challenge the absurd notion that you can have your truth and I can have my truth. Because that's not truth. That's opinion. That's not truth. That's changing the meaning of the word. We need to change it back. We need to take it back and we need to use it correctly. And we need to challenge people when they say, well, it's true to me. No, it's not true to you. That's your opinion. That's a lie. And it's not consistent with everything we know to be true. It is therefore not truth at all. Words are really important. And it's something that I talk about in Fighting God that we really need to own and we really need to speak specifically when we're talking so that we can communicate better. And religion is really, really skilled at misusing words like truth and other words to push its agenda. We need to not let that happen, and we certainly do not need to give in on one of the most important words there is. Hi.
You had mentioned before about...
Put the microphone closer, please.
You had mentioned before about not respecting religion, which I totally agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you can respect the believer.
Yeah.
And I find that when I talk with people, some of them don't understand that distinction.
Yes.
They very much think I'm attacking them, that
Yes.
I'm not respecting them.
Yes.
So do you have any advice on how to deal with those kinds of people?
So the first thing you need to understand is that religious people aren't stupid, right? Religious people aren't stupid. They're victims of a lie. They're victims of a scam. They're victims of a con. My mother was religious. My sister is religious. My grandmother was religious. And as victims of that con, they have been programmed with responses. They have been programmed with reactions. And religion has programmed them to the whole I'm offended by your words thing. What is that? It's a self-defense mechanism that religion has against you. It's made to shut you down. That's what religion is trying to do, shut you down by telling the adherents to you that you're being offensive when you just challenge religion. That you're being offensive. You're hurting them. You're hurting them. It's my closely held religious beliefs. We must understand when we talk to these people that they are victims of a scam. That their offense is a symptom of that scam, a symptom of their brainwashing. This does not mean we give up. It does not mean we step away. That's the worst thing we can do. That's exactly what we're supposed to do, exactly what religion wants us to do. Shut up and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, and walk away. And then don't challenge religion anymore, and then you feel bad. That's bullshit. What we have to do is explain that there's a lot of things out there that we disagree with. You and I disagree on many things. I don't even know you, but I'm sure we disagree on lots of things. And you can say that you and I will disagree on religion, but agree on probably lots and lots of other things. But the one thing that we should not do is give in. We should not say, okay, I'm not going to help you. Because that's what we're doing here. These are victims of a scam. These are hurt people, injured people. And as people who have freed ourselves from that scam, it is our ethical responsibility to at least try to help. It is. An example that I give is one from my mother. My mother, before she died, I found out that she was going to a psychic. And she was paying money to a psychic, and she didn't have money. So I sat her down, and I calmly but firmly convinced her not to go to the psychic anymore. I told her it was a scam. I told her, she said, oh, I like going. I said, Mom, if you want somebody to lie to you, I'll lie to you, and I won't charge you any money. But I told her not to go, and I convinced her not to go. And that was a good deed. That was a good thing to do. She was the victim of the scam. I helped my mother. But when we're talking about religious beliefs, which is the exact same kind of scam, only on a much larger scale, has the exact same amount of evidence to support it, 0, we're bad. What I ask you to do is understand that when you help somebody free themselves from a scam, you're doing a good deed. And religion is the biggest scam on the planet. And they will fight you on that scam. They will say, oh, my tarot card reader told me so many things. Oh, my homeopathic medicine does such good work. Oh, my God in the sky is giving me such comfort. It's all a scam. And when they push back, it's a symptom of that scam. And they push back by saying, oh, it's offensive to me when you say that. Just think about what what I would have said if my mother said, it's offensive to me when you say there are no psychics. It's offensive to me when you say homeopathic medicine is bad. That's a defense mechanism from religion, and you need to separate that out. You need to make sure that they know that you're talking about religion, not about them, not about their parents, but you're talking about the lie of the invisible man in the sky. Thank you.
Hello. Hey. So I agree with you about your claims that truth is exclusive.
That's because you're brilliant.
Right. So obviously the truth, God can't exist. The truth, God exists. They don't match. But I'm curious about what you're basing your foundation on, because it sounds like you're saying that lack of evidence is evidence of lacking, which very few philosophers.
I didn't say that.
Well, so I may be new to this kind of crowd.
Okay. So we have a set of knowledge in this world that we call truth. Okay, we have a set of knowledge in this world that we call knowledge. And anything that conflates against that knowledge has to be challenged. So let me give you an example. I know a man who can fly like Superman. He can fly like Superman. It breaks the law of physics. It goes against something that we as a society know to be true. He can defy gravity with his brain and fly around like Superman. That breaks the law of physics. It goes against everything we know to be true. Would you believe it? You would probably say, prove that shit. You'd probably say, all right, if you got a guy who can fly around, I'm not going to believe you because it breaks the law of physics, and I know this. I'm going to ask you for proof. And then I say, well, I like to believe it. My mother used to go to a church of the flying man around, and it really warms my heart. It's very important to me. It's a closely held belief. Wouldn't it be nice if people could fly? We could fly to the moon anytime we wanted to. It would be great. So that's why I believe in the man in the sky, the man who can fly around like Superman. You would say, no. You would say, you need to prove that shit. Show me a person who can fly, who can break a law of physics. And barring that, there is no wordsmithing that would get you to say anything other than, I'm lying. There's nothing. I would not be able to convince you of anything to that effect. Now, God, any God, is never born, will never die, can not only fly, can actually be everywhere at once, can read minds, can create and destroy matter and energy with his brain. He can do so many things that break laws of physics. He can break a hell of a lot more laws of physics than flying Superman. He can do a lot more. But when we challenge that, when I say prove it, we get, well, you don't know everything. How do you base that? That's a symptom of the pedestal on which religion sits in our society. If it's something easy, like Superman, we discount it completely. But if it's something grandiose, we give it rationalism. You say, oh, well, maybe it's true. Maybe it's real. Well, of course, we all want to live forever. Everybody wants to live forever. That's the basis of religion. That's what religion does. It stops you from believing in death. It allows you, it's going to look exactly like you're dying, but you're going to go somewhere and you're going to live forever. That's why we want that. But if we apply our reasoning consistently, we can say there is definitely no God. Because, and I say this in the book, the sum total, if you took all of the scientifically valid evidence for everything supernatural ever, every ghost, every haunting, every miracle, every God, if you took all of the scientifically valid evidence for all of it in world history and put it together in one place, you'd have nothing at all. It's all hype. It's all a lie. It's all a scam. It's all, I want it to be true. I need it in my heart. Mom said, the preacher said, the book says. It's all hype. All of it, without exception. Prove me wrong once, I'll quit my job. And I put that in the book. And I put it in there really hard because I want to make the statement that we as a society push against reasoning religion out of existence. And when we try and do that, we hurt ourselves as a society and as a planet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A two-part question. Is Europe ahead of the United States in breaking free from religion? And if that is true, why?
Yes. Yes. And that's a big question. The speculation that I tend to agree with is that is the separation of church and state is actually hurting us. It's odd, but when you have a society where religion is allowed to run free, and you combine that with unfair capitalism, you get a lot of religions and a lot of megachurches who are just lying for money, which is, of course, what religion does. In Europe, we're seeing they have things like, Germany has a state church, England has a state church, right? Norway, they have a state church. It's laughed off. But the Scientologists don't have a place. They're all second-class citizens as far as religion is concerned, and it restricts them. And it stops them from getting money and funds and power in government. And I speculated that is the real reason. I had a really long discussion with Richard Dawkins once about this, and he kind of agrees that it seems to be that the separation of church and state has done very well for the Christian religion, Mormonism, all that stuff. Think about it. The freedom that it gets, combined with unfettered capitalism and a lot of lying, is what makes religion so big. And that seems to be what's happening. Now, I'll tell you a side story, which I also find very interesting. I think you will too. When I first started talking about fighting God, in fact, the first stop on my book tour was in China, Shanghai, China. Shanghai, China, they have required atheism. They've had required atheism for decades, but it was a dogmatic atheism, right? It was not learned atheism. It was not about critical thought. It was not about information. It was about memorization and regurgitation, exactly like religion. You are an atheist, okay? There is no God, just that. And then what happened is China relaxed those rules. And when that happened, Islam and Christianity went to China. And they challenged the dogmatic atheism with their dogma. They didn't challenge critical thought with dogma, as they would here. We're all atheists because we understand critical thought, because we've thought about it and considered it, read. That's not the way it was in China. It was dogma. And the dogma in China was, you're going to die. And then they come in with dogma that says, you're going to live forever. And so what we're seeing in China is a rapid expansion of Christianity and Islam. So much so that organized atheism in China is scared. And that's why they called me out to China to talk to them about it, to try and gather up more firebrand atheism. And another story related more to your question is that this is happening in Europe too. The growth of Islam. Let me back up a bit. Douglas Adams wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And he was a Londoner. And when he and I met, 1997, I think, I asked him if his atheism had gotten in the way of his career. And he kind of looked at me. He didn't understand why I would even ask such a question. Because there was nothing like that in Europe. It was way beyond us. And it wasn't until he moved to America that he called me up and he said, now I understand why you asked that question so many years ago. So we had this atheism in Europe that was almost ever present, either way, and not persecuted, not at all threatened. And so there was no firebrand atheism in Europe, really. The firebrand organizations in Europe were very, very small. But the growth of Islam, specifically, is triggering a rise in firebrand atheism in Europe, which is why my book tour included Heidelberg, Basel, and Zurich, because they're worried now. The firebrand atheists in Europe are worried because of the growth of Islam, and they're becoming more firebrand as a result.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Dave. Welcome to Richmond, and it's always a pleasure. I've seen you a lot of times. You do a lot of great things for us, and we're all grateful to you.
Thank you.
The Reason Rally was awesome. I look forward to the one.
I've got to talk about the Reason Rally. Thank you. I forgot to talk about the Reason Rally.
I have two things I'd like to talk about.
Put the microphone closer to your mouth.
One is culture. So, I think religion has been brainwashed in the Bible Belt in the 20th century a lot in the culture here. And I think a lot of people, common folk, family people, and so on, have their culture ingrained with religion. They do things, and with religious people and all that. Do you have any ideas of how to offer replacements for the things that they used to do in church and things like that as they come out and leave?
So, yeah, there's two answers to that question. The first answer is there's a lot of things that people can do. I mean, we're in a Unitarian church, that's one idea. But there's also Sunday Assembly, there's also other secular groups that perform that function. But if you look at other countries, the culture hasn't been missed. The concept of, we have a community in the church, and we need another community when we leave the church, doesn't appear to be that consistent. We as atheists and people inside seem to think that that's an important thing, and it indeed is truly important to some. But I speculate that it is not as important as we think it is. Because I think that the whole concept of needing that community is religion born. It gives religion a bigger purpose than just talking about the man in the sky. It holds people to the church. And of course, like I said to the lady over there, religion has a lot of defense mechanisms, and that's one of them. In my experience, when people leave religion, they don't want any of that crap, a lot of times. And so when we're talking about freeing the religious victims in the middle, where it's so ingrained in the culture, that is the longer term goal, right? That's the longer term. We're going to come out and come in. The way to do it is with plurality. The way to do it is by showing that there are different ways to do things. And yes, we need to provide atheist churches. We need to provide atheist churches. We need to support atheist churches. Even if we find it repugnant, which I do, but it's still, I'm not everybody, right? And some people need it, some people want it. And if you think on an evolutionary track, you make your changes in the smallest possible way. So going from a theistic church to a non-theistic church is the smallest possible change. That's why I fully support non-theistic churches. I fully support atheist churches, even though that's very much not my style. I just want to counter and follow up with that and say that I do believe that, and from my completely anecdotal experience, that when people leave the church, they don't want anything like it to replace it. They don't actually want it. I know there are some people in the atheist movement right now who are former preachers. And they get up on stage and they do their pseudo fire and brimstone atheist speeching. But they sound so much like preachers, because they were, that former victims of religion can't listen to them. They don't want to listen to them. They leave the stage, not because they don't like what the person is saying, but because of the way it sounds. It reminds them of religion. This happens a lot. This reminds me too much of those days. Get me out of here. It's almost like a PTSD. So it's important that we understand that part of the country will change the slowest, because it's had the biggest growth, and because it has the lowest education level, and because they don't know how to think critically. But at the same time, as far as the cultural replacement, while we do have to supply something, we don't have to supply enough to replace every church. Because I believe the vast majority of the people who leave church will leave all of it behind.
And the second question, I see a lot of fear in family values coming from the left side. And, you know, we're all as one, as we say, you know, it's just some of us are smarter than the others or have knowledge than the other.
Or more equal than others.
Right. And so how do we, as firebrand atheists, address the argument that there are no family values in firebrand atheism as if it's taken away from them?
Well,
us.
there are no family values in firebrand atheism. Okay, that's not why we're here. Okay, however, there is compassion, and that's the point that I make in Fighting God. That everything that we're doing is about compassion. But we are talking about telling the truth. And in Fighting God, I talk about morality, and what I say in morality is that I'm not going to dictate morality. I'm not going to tell you what you do. What we can do is describe to people how morality comes around. A trick question that I like to ask people is, okay, you go to listen to your pastor speak, and he says something wholly immoral. Now, this is a trick question. He says something wholly immoral. What do you do? And I tell them that that's a trick question. And they say, well, I would pray about it. I would go talk to him about it. I would change the church and find another church that I agreed with. What they don't say is, that's impossible because my morality comes from a church. Therefore, the preacher is therefore incapable of saying immoral things. That means that they understand that morality does not come from their religion. It doesn't come from their religion. Morality takes the credit for morality. It doesn't actually give you anything. That's why immoral people can be religious or non-religious. That's why religious people can be good or bad. That's why we can be bad. Because we get the same morality from the same place that they do, ourselves and our society, the way we're brought up. That's how we get our morality. When people change churches because they don't like one church, so they move to another, that is a symptom. And then they move to another church that agrees with them, and the preacher says, God believes you're right. And the guy says, well, I'm right. This is God's word. So religion takes the credit for morality, and we don't. We don't. We're not replacing religion. We're telling the truth. You get your morality from where you get it from. And I'm not here to make any passing judgments on your morality, but I am here to say that I think it's moral for us to tell the truth and help people free themselves from the scam that is religion.
All right, before we ask one more question, hold on 1 minute. Go ahead and plug in Reason Rally before you forget.
Thank you, Lawrence. Okay. Thank you a lot, because I forgot about it again. Okay, so two things I want to plug. First of all is American Atheists. American Atheists is America's oldest 501c3 organization for atheists. It was founded in 1963 by Madeleine Murray O'Hair, a woman in whose chair I am thrilled to sit. We run a completely efficient organization, completely transparent organization. We audit our financials every year and post them on the web. We have quantifiable, I'm going to say this again, quantifiable independent evidence that suggests that we at American Atheists, as an individual corporation, are changing this country for the better. Quantifiable evidence from multiple independent sources suggests strongly, that American Atheists as an organization is effectively changing this country. And our membership is $35 a year. And we have 5 employees. 5. I don't believe there's any other organization that can tell you that they can point to actual positive change in the country as a direct result of our activities. I don't believe anybody can do that. We can. And we do it with 5 employees, and we have audited financials on the web so that you can see how your money is being spent. We have no debt, and we work within our means every year. Donations are tax deductible, and it's $35 a year for membership. Now, most of you are not members of American Atheists, and to those of you who are not members of American Atheists, it's time to pony up your $35. And you know, people say, oh, I don't like it when you ask for money because it looks like religion when you do that. It looks like religion. He asked for money. It looks like religion. Isn't that exactly what religion wants you to do? Let me not give them money. Oh, they're doing work that I support. They're doing it transparently. They're doing it efficiently. They're doing it without debt. But I don't want to give them money because it looks like religion when we do. That's a load of shit right there. That's exactly what religion wants you to do. Sit down, shut up, don't call yourself an atheist, and don't donate to the movement. The website is atheists.org. And really and truly, it is time to start donating to this movement. If you're not donating to the local organizations, it's time to start donating to the local organizations. Not once. You don't put in $5 here and that's the end. Every single time you come to one of these events, you pony up. It's time for that. It's time for us all to start chipping in. And when it comes to American Atheists, yes, I really do want your membership. I really do want your $35. Guess what? If you can donate more, donate more. It's good. A life membership is $1,200. That's not a lot of money compared to what people ask for religion. But yes, I'm asking it for you. I'm asking it from you. It is time for us to start doing this. And it's time for us to start all chipping in. The website for American Atheists is atheists.org. Now, 2012, I created and ran the Reason Rally. The Reason Rally was the largest atheist event in world history. 30,000 people on the Mall of Washington, D.C. Stars included Adam Savage, Tim Minchin, Eddie Izzard, and had a sublimely good time in the rain. If you're in a room right now and you're thrilled to be in a room with about 100 people, 100 atheists, just think of what it felt to be in a place with 30,000.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. It was a life-changing event for a lot of people. And who was there? Who else was there? Oh, okay. Rock and roll, folks. Well, there's going to be another one. And I'm thrilled to be vice president of the Reason Rally this time. And I'm also thrilled to be chair of programming. Chair of programming. Which means I know things you don't know. I know who's coming. I know who has confirmed. I know who we haven't announced yet. And I know what's going to happen. June 4th, 2016. There will be no American Atheist Convention this year. A lot of organizations are not having a convention this year because this reason is going to dwarf the last one. Dwarf it. I can't tell you who's coming, but I can tell you that I know who's coming. And I can tell you that we have a bigger budget. I can tell you that we have a bigger team, a huge team actually, of movement-wide, competent, well-seasoned activists doing fantastic work. I can tell you that if you don't go, you will regret it. I can tell you that I strongly suspect that once we make the announcements that we're going to make, the hotels will fill up immediately. Immediately. So, the Reason Rally website is reasonrally.org. It's on June 4th, 2016. And I hope you all come because not only do I want you all, but you all want to be there. You might not think you want to be there. If you think you don't want to be there, you are factually incorrect. You do want to be there. You just don't know what I know. So please put it in your calendars. June 4th, it's actually the whole weekend. It goes from the Thursday through the Sunday, but the rally is on the 4th, which is a Saturday. Make it happen, folks. Do whatever you can. We got buses that are being arranged. You can get on a bus and share a bus down. It's all on reasonrally.org. Bring your kids, bring your family, bring your theistic friends. Bring everybody. And you will have the time of your life, I swear to God. Next.
I founded a local neighborhood network, which is part of Nextdoor.com. Anybody here heard of Nextdoor.com? Anyway, it's an online neighborhood network that's not like Facebook in that people can be from all over the world, but they're actually certified as being from your neighborhood. So they're people that you might actually run into on the street. And I think getting neighbor to neighbor to deal with this issue of atheism versus faith versus fact and all of that I think will be ultimately critical to something really happening on a national basis. I really love what you're doing nationally and on Fox Network, talking to those idiots. But we all can't do that. But I think all of us can, theoretically, talk to our next-door neighbor or our neighbors down the block or on different floors and so forth. So I'm going to suggest at some point, when I feel confident about it, to the neighbors through this network that we get together to start talking about these issues. But, one, I don't want to get my house I don't know, toilet rolled or rocks thrown through the window or my tire slit. And I want to invite people who are religious as well as those who are not to come to some sort of discussion group. And I'm not confident that firebrand atheism is a way to do it, is a way to, to open the discussion. I wonder if anybody has any suggestions on that line.
So, first of all, what you're talking about is firebrand atheism, okay? When I talk about firebrand atheism, I'm not talking about how you do it. I'm not talking about I'm talking about that you should do it. I'm talking about activism is firebrand atheism, but activism under the atheist word is firebrand atheism. You can do your atheism, activism, any way you see fit. We have Manual for Creating Atheists right here, and that's a great book. It's one way that you can talk to people. As far as your meeting is concerned, I would suggest at first not inviting theists. Just not inviting theists. Bring the atheists in. Get them together. What brings atheists out of the closet is the togetherness, is the openness, it's the ability to talk frankly. That's what will get them involved in your group. If you want to have an event at which you invite theists to talk, that's a thing. But when you're talking about having a group that is about atheists and theists talking, you will be overrun with theists and have very few atheists. People will be afraid, just like you are, of getting your house toilet papered and stuff like that. And I don't know enough about your immediate area to know whether or not that's valid. I do know that in my personal anecdotal experience, that's not a real thing, or it's not a very big thing. A lot of times atheists have a much worse opinion of Christians than they deserve. A good example is when I went to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, which is, that's where all the Jesus people go to be Jesus-y about Jesus running the Constitution. And I met a lot of Christians there, as you would expect. And almost all of them were very nice and supportive. Almost all of them. Like 5 were not. And CPAC has 10,000 people. And, oh, by the way, there were tons and tons of atheists. And I just came here from Salt Lake City. And one of the things that you'll find in Salt Lake City, there are 2 things you'll find in Salt Lake City: Mormons and atheists who are pissed off at the Mormons. So you're talking about Richmond, Virginia. You're talking about people. You're talking about what I expect to be a lot more atheists than you think in your local community, and a lot nicer Christians than you think in your local community. That's me speculating. It's up to you to decide. But I strongly suspect that you make it, first of all, it's a fantastic idea. You should definitely do it. How you do it is up to you. What words you use is up to you. But it's not about converting atheists or converting theists. It's not about the debate. If you want to get atheists to come out of the woodwork, give them a social, happy experience with other atheists so that they can speak freely, because they don't get to do it now. That's what's going to attract them.
Yes, hi. There's a little bit of an overlap with the question. Even though the atheist organization is growing, the reputation is not. And if you have twisted minds like O'Reilly, who thrives on dragging us through the mud, what do you think is the best thing to do? I've seen many interviews, not only on his show, but also on CNN, for example, where they're interviewing people, and the last single person they want to have live next to them as a neighbor is an atheist. And I think once that image is changed, or we can improve that, it would open a door for people who are sitting on the fence and just need that little push to join us.
So all the data that I have in Fighting God disputes your point. All the data that I have says that atheism is becoming more and more regular, more and more normal, and increasing in acceptability on a rapid level. It's not happening on Fox News. Okay? Fox News is where they demonize atheists. It's where they bring me on and shout me down. And yes, when they shout down, I have to shout back. It's how I get my points across. And when they talk about it on these other shows, they always demonize us because they're pawns, because they have an agenda. That's what they're trying to do. Their target market is not our target market. But I absolutely disagree with you that we're not making substantial progress. And no, I absolutely disagree with you that we should do anything different other than going on these shows and making our points, because those points that we make on those shows, those go on YouTube, and they speak to millions of atheists like us. I mean, that meme face that I made on O'Reilly, it's gone viral. It's crazy how many times that's been seen. And what does it show? It shows our target demographic. It shows them me being rational and me being beaten down and being standing up to a bully who won't let me talk. It works great. So I fundamentally disagree that it hurts us, and the numbers that I have in Fighting God stands back.
All right, we're going to have to start winding down pretty soon. We'd like to do a couple more questions if we can. Okay. We'll do two more. One over there, one over there. Can I ask you about Flint first? There's been a public outcry about Flint, Michigan, where several thousand, children especially have been poisoned owing to greed and carelessness and dishonesty. I'd like you to talk about your feelings on childhood indoctrination. Flint reached a few thousand kids.
I'm sorry, I can't hear your words.
The idea is religion has reached several billion people. What do you think in terms of childhood indoctrination? Richard Dawkins, Andy Thompson talk about childhood indoctrination like child abuse. Do you think that we need some public outcry the same way we have it about the poisoning of kids in Flint, Michigan, what childhood indoctrination does?
I do agree that childhood indoctrination is child abuse. I do agree to that. And I'll go one step further, because I think that we need to start talking about the immorality of non-religious people joining a church for their children. I think we have to talk about the immorality of raising kids in a religion that you don't believe in because it's important to children. I think it's a devastatingly horrible thing for a parent to do. A devastatingly horrible, cruel, lazy, bullshit thing for a parent to do. To say, I don't believe in God, but I'm going to join a church for my child because I have children. That's hurting them. That's lying to them. That's making them a pawn in something that you know is bullshit. And yes, it is child abuse to brainwash a child. Yes, it is child abuse to set people up to be ignorant, to not know how to tell the difference between right and wrong. It is child abuse and horrible fucking parenting to subject your children to something you know is false for morality because you're too goddamn lazy to teach your kids the truth. That's a wrong thing to do. It's a terrible thing to do, and that's going to be the subject of my next book.
Yeah, my question entails religion and government. What kind of regulation, if any, would you advocate, or should we just continue with more of a grassroots movement? An amendment. What would you personally think about that?
So, the first thing we have to do is understand what religion is. Every religious person in the world has something in common. They agree with their gods completely. Okay? Every religious person you've ever met agrees with their gods. Nobody says, well, God thinks this, but I disagree. Nobody says that. Why? Because people invent their gods. People invent their own religions. A whole bunch of Christians can get together and they'll all have completely different opinions about what their God wants because they invent their gods. Every religious person invents their own gods, which means religious feelings, religion, is nothing more than personal opinion. It is nothing more than personal opinion. Closely held religious beliefs equals personal opinion that you're shielding behind closely held religious beliefs. Okay, so now let's talk about the separation of religion and government. If I think that the invisible man in the sky wants me to drive 70 miles an hour in a 50 zone, and it's my closely held religious belief, do I get to do it? No. If I say my God wants me to stop other people from marrying because it's my closely held religious belief, can I do it? No. What we need to do as a society is understand that closely held religious beliefs is a euphemism for opinion. And that's all it is. And that means that your opinion doesn't have sway on civil law. We need an absolute separation of religion and government because that is a synonym for religious freedom. And because that gets people to obey all the same laws equally. Religious freedom comes from everybody having the exact same laws. And that's why we need an absolute separation of religion and government, because it actually just is a separation of government from everybody else's personal shit. Yeah, I swear a little bit. I swear a little bit. No, I'm in Virginia. I just came from Salt Lake City. You know why people from New Jersey swear so much? Because fuck you.
All right, go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do one more question, and then what we're going to do is close it up. And if you happen to have bought a book, and maybe you can come up if you have more questions and talk to Dave about it. But if you have not bought a book, so we apologize for not having them here. It sort of felt we were supposed to have some, but please go out and buy the book, because Dave here came here to help us out, to have this great event. So we didn't pay him. So buy his book.
So buy the book. Buy it for your friends.
Just to clarify, I do want to thank RRNA and Richmond Units just for helping cover a little bit of his hotel cost. It's very meager compared to his overall expenses, but again, thank you to both groups for helping with that.
My question is, we all have spouses, family, significant others who are theists. And you said you have been married to your wife who is a theist for 20 years. And then you also, in the beginning of your lecture, when you were reading out of the book, talked about respect, and I may have misunderstood this, not respecting.
Not respecting the belief, but respecting the believer.
And my question is, how do you do that?
Okay. So this is an important question, right? And it is actually a question on which I've changed my mind. I have been married to my wife since Chris and I went to college with her back in 18-something. And she was an Orthodox Jew when I met her. And when we got married, we talked about, she was a Reformed Jew. And we lived, note the past tense there, lived for 23 years as a mixed marriage, as a mixed couple. In fact, one time, she actually asked me to convert her, to convince her. And I said no. I wanted it to be on her own. And I have decided that that was the wrong thing for me to do. I have decided that religion is a scam, religion is a con, religion hurts people, and it is indeed the ethical thing to do to help people away from religion. I think I hurt my wife by allowing her to live in that fantasy for so many years. And what happened was, past tense again, she read Fighting God before it was published and decided to tell me that she was atheist. So, now.
Yes, but.
Now, she read the book, yeah. So having said that, it's important, yes, absolutely important that we respect our humans, that we respect our family. And it's absolutely important that we understand that we might not convert them and that we would find it annoying if they tried to convert us. It's still important that we understand the ethics of the situation. It's still important that we understand that it's a good deed to help people away from the religion, that they would get annoyed and they would try and convert us because of the brainwashing that they've received, and that they need to hear from us, and they need to hear point blank, certainly, the truth. They need to hear that we don't respect their religious beliefs. They need to hear that their man in the sky is a silly myth. They need to hear it. Ethically, we need to tell them, because they're victims of a scam. Now, it doesn't mean we should be rude, and it certainly doesn't mean we should be disrespectful. Like I said, my mother, my wife, sister, theists. Got to respect your family. Got to respect the fact that if not by the grace of dumb luck, we could have been born in fundamentalist Muslim families, and we would have been brainwashed into it, and we would be a pawn too. So we have to understand that, and we have to have compassion for the theists. We have to have love for the theists. We don't need to be rude. We don't need to be crass. But we do need to be truthful and honest. And I'll close this out with one more saying, that somebody asked me in my last speech about talking to his grandmother, rather. He said that his grandmother was 75 years old, and why in the world should I talk to her about it? And I said to him, 75 years old is not dead. 75 years old is not senile. 75 years old is not frail. 75 years old is not fragile. 75 years old can learn, can understand, and can realize that, yes, they've been wasting their time all this time, but they can stop wasting their time now. 75 years old can learn. 75 years old can handle it. And 75 years old deserves respect. And if you're not telling your 75-year-old grandmother the truth, you are not respecting her intelligence at all. You're making a decision for her. Oh, Grandma, you're too frail to hear the news. Oh, Grandpa, you're too senile, too feeble to hear my words. You'll break down. That's crap. 75 years old was around for World War II. They know this stuff. They're hard. They know how to talk, and they deserve honesty and integrity and the respect of the younger generation. They can handle it. They're strong, and they deserve the respect, and they deserve the respect that you give them when you tell them the truth and stop pussyfooting around them because they're old. Thank you.